Hey, good morning, everyone. Today, I'd like to talk about something which we do every day, whether we are aware or not. So, any guesses about what it might be? Well, it's not walking, it's also not breathing. That's too easy. So, actually, the topic that I would like to talk about today is decision making, and it's actually on my first slide. So, I would like to ask everyone if you think you are a good decision maker, or whether this question ever come across in your head before. I think some of us say yes, some say sometimes, some say I don't know. Yeah, so we make hundreds if not thousands of decisions every single day, whether we are aware or not. And sometimes these decisions are relatively easy and straightforward to make. Like, for example, you're going to make a decision about, oh, we're going to have a dinner, are you going to catch the latest movie that just got released, and things like that. So these are pretty much, doesn't require too much framework. And then there are other times where the decision is already made for us. Like, our boss telling us, okay, you go attend this meeting. For sure, you have to attend and you can't say no. So in those cases, we don't have a right to exercise our options or what we want to do. Okay, and then there are other times when we have to make really, really hard decisions. And this decision is like for example, if the doctor comes to you and asks you, would you like to put your mom or your dad on a life support machine? And can you imagine if the doctor asks such a question to you, what is your first reaction? How are you going to make this decision? Because whatever choice that you make is going to have a direct and immediate impact on that person. And that decision that you make is not just based on what you think, but it's also have to factor in what's the other person's perspective. So which should have a larger say, what you think or what is in the best of the other person? So, how do we make such decision? So before today's talk, I kind of took decision making quite for granted because I think that it's something not rocket science, right? Like when you need to make a decision, you just do it. But then I started to dig deeper and I actually found quite interesting things about decision making. So I'd like to share with you that there's actually this framework from the University of Massachusetts, and they have these 7 steps to making effective decisions, right? So usually each one of us will go through maybe not in sequence, maybe sometimes simultaneously, but we will identify the decision to be made, gather enough information to make that decision. Then we will identify the different alternatives before we weigh the pros and the cons of each option that we have. And then we will choose from our options. And then we will decide to take that decision. And after that, some of us, we may reflect and think about, oh, did I make that right decision? So in general, this is the steps. We may or we may not follow it in sequence. We may do certain things together, like maybe step 2, 3, 4 together. Sometimes we skip steps depending on the complication, how complex the decision is. Okay, so I'd like you to keep this framework in mind when I talk about or when I share my stories, and then you can think for yourself and decide whether each of the characters went through these individual steps in the framework in a sequential manner, or do they skip steps before arriving at their decision? So over here, you can see this old travel trunk. And this old travel trunk is something similar to one which my grandmother has. So in the people in the past, when they travel, they will pack their belongings into travel trunks like that, and they will lug it with them onto the ships. So my grandma came to Singapore with her mother and her father and a younger brother during the World War II, and they came from Hainan Island. So you can imagine like the journey which they had to take, the sea voyage. It's fraught with a lot of challenges in terms of the serious weather conditions, lack of food and clean water, and poor sanitation and hygiene. And my grandmother, every time when she would recount her story, she would usually cry because it really touched her, a very raw emotions in her. And certainly this trip is not for someone who is faint-hearted. So things are supposed to look up and be better after they set foot to Singapore. However, it was not because her younger brother had a high fever one time, and because they were too poor to visit the doctor, and her brother didn't receive the medical treatment that he needed in time, and in the end, he passed away. So, but I believe my great-grandmother and great-grandfather made the best decision that they could have made given the set of circumstances that they were in. And I'm sure they definitely, weigh all their options and their survival rate before making that fateful and difficult decision to bring as many children with them as possible to Singapore. And it was just unfortunate that my grandmother's brother didn't make it. So that was my great-grandmother and my grandmother's story. And now I'd like to share something closer to me. So previously, I shared about my bucket list, and one of it is to climb Mount Kinabalu. So here we are at Mount Kinabalu. As you can see, we are happily jumping up on the slopes of the mountain. And this is after the hike to the summit. So before we climb any mountain, of course, we need to train our body and condition it to the most optimal level before we embark on that expedition. So our training regimen included climbing stairs, swimming, running, and doing weights. And it didn't turn out the way we expect, because we reached the summit base, Laban Rata, at a much later timing. And Laban Rata is also the place where we would rest for the night, and also where we will have our meals. So at about 1:30 a.m. that night, okay, we woke up and we had our breakfast, and we started to ascend to the summit. So usually it takes about 3 hours to reach the summit, depending on your fitness level. So on the way up, we actually met with another group, which had actually overtook us because they're much faster. So they overtook us. But then this group had a member who suffered from an asthma attack, and then they had to stop. So if you know or are familiar with mountain climbing, the air up in the mountain is really thin, and you need to climb slowly for your body to acclimatize. Else you can suffer from altitude sickness, which can be medically dangerous. So along the way up, we started to feel fatigue setting in, and I requested for us to rest, and the guide allowed us to do that. And it was cold and I was tired. I wanted very much to just close my eyes and sleep and rest. And at this point, the guide said, "No, hello, wake up. You can't do that. There are people who have rested there and they really sleep forever." So I was forced out of my rest and made to continue to climb. And I thought okay, we're quite smooth from here, right? But no. So nearer the top, my brother tapped me and he told me that, I feel very breathless. Then he started to turn purple on his lips, which is a very clear sign of a lack of oxygen. So the guide, he looked very concerned and he said, "Okay, you all take out the oxygen canisters, which we had brought along with us." And he told my brother to take in 2 breaths of pure oxygen, just 2. Any more, you can actually die from oxygen poisoning. So he said that if it doesn't work after breathing in the pure oxygen, we will have to, abandon this expedition. We can't continue because it's too risky. So after the two taking in the oxygen, luckily my brother recovered, and then he asked the guide. The guide asked us whether we wanted to continue with our climb to the summit, and we decided to, okay, let's just give it our best shot, and we just continue to make our way up. But if anyone decide to feel not right along the way up, we will then stop the climb and head back down. So the decision, paid off for us. So here we are at the summit, and we made it in one piece. And we have that mandatory shot that you have, with the summit sign, yeah. And that's my brother on the right, together with me. And of course, we are very happy, yeah. So that's one thing off my bucket list. And now let's move a bit further away from Malaysia and head over to Vietnam. So it has always been my dream to stay close to nature and run a business in that setting. So when my ex and I met and I started him out on the idea, he was also sold. And still, he's a Vietnamese, and he went back to Vietnam and actually found a plot of land which he thought was suitable to have this dream plan started. And he started to transform the place, which used to just grow coffee beans, to one that could grow vegetables and fruit trees. So that was our dream plan. B&B homestay close to nature, and we could do a concept of farm to table, so it's totally idealistic and dreamy. Yeah, so that's my supposedly new home. But then the reality of it is that the whole place looks so idyllic and peaceful, right? Look at this beautiful sunrise and sunset that I get to see almost every day. Yeah, this is the physical environment, really peaceful, really nice. But on the emotional aspect, I had to endure social alienation because I don't speak the language. I have no friends there, and there was a lot of loss of self-worth because I quit my job, and we were still in the midst of setting up the B&B, and I didn't have a salary. So, and then there were also the physical circumstances of where we were living. So the old house that we had leakages, and the dark kitchen with cobwebs. I don't think you would fancy cooking a meal there. The bed was a wooden planks, which I couldn't sleep, obviously. So we eventually had to get some mattress. Yeah, because city girl cannot sleep in that condition. So when you live in the countryside, you also need to respect it and abide with its own laws. So you have to plan your day around it. Like, for example, going to the market. You can't go at any time that you like. Like over here, the supermarkets are 24 hours. Over there, if you don't wake up in the morning to go to the market, that's it. You're not going to have food for the rest of the day because there's no other markets available. And they will also have electrical outages. So you are not going to get electricity, and you have to plan all the things that you want to do with electricity before that happen, or either do it later. So all these inconveniences of country life made me question my decision about moving there. And after trying for 1.5 months, trying to adapt, trying to make it work, I decided to make the difficult decision to move back to Singapore and call it quits. And of course, the relationship didn't work out. If you ask me if that was a bad decision made, I don't think so, because I made it in good faith with the hope that things were going to work out according to our plan. Unfortunately, there weren't enough conditions for things to unfold in the way it should. However, through that experience, I learned a lot about myself, and I also matured in many ways. So I never regretted my decision, neither do I think it was a bad decision. Yeah. So over here, I'm back in Singapore, and last December, my good friend, she shared with me that she had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and doctor gave her 6 months to live. So my friend is very strong-willed, and she decided to go for treatment to try and save her life. And here you can see she's receiving a blood transfusion because the tumor in her body is bleeding, and she needs to replenish her blood supply. If not, she will die from a lack of blood. So even though she has been undergoing treatment, she never lost her interest in gardening. So here we see a pot of beautiful roses, which she's growing and it's blooming well. And I think seeing the plants grow so well gives her hope that she will be fine again. And currently she's in her 4th round of chemo treatment, and things are looking good. The cancer markers have dropped significantly, which is a good sign. And I can only imagine how tough it is to make this decision to have to fight and save your own life. And I really respect her for her resilience and determination. And through her own experience, currently right now, she's also writing a book, which she hopes she can publish when she has completed her manuscript. So wish her all the best in her quest to be well again. And just like a plant would shed its lower leaves when it's time to grow taller, and then the shed leaves would turn into compost for the plant to help it to grow taller, I feel we can also learn to be like a plant, where we let go of our past bad experiences, but we draw on the lessons that they have taught us to make us more resilient, determined, and better at making decisions. So I'll leave you with this quote from Mark Twain, and he says that good decisions come from experience and experience come from making bad decisions. And I would like to encourage all of us to be brave and have the courage to make tough decisions, because they will ultimately help us to understand ourselves better, to become better people. Thank you.